Hello Internet, welcome to my channel. I'm Chameleon X, and if you've been paying any attention at all to the Dungeons & Dragons community, you'll know that Wizards of the Coast just recently put out the latest playtest packet for the new edition of D&D. In this article, WotC laid out the proposed alterations to the Bard, Ranger, and Rogue, 3 of the 4 Expert classes, which is their term for character classes that focus on filling the skill monkey role in a standard D&D adventuring party. Now, of course, a lot of the proposed changes have been controversial, and being a playtest, not all of these ideas are going to be pushed through to the next phase of design. However, one obvious glaring issue is that the changes to these classes are going to necessitate changes to many, if not all, of the subclasses for these classes that previously relied on their class features from the vanilla game. For the Ranger and Rogue, this isn't too big of a deal for the most part, since most of their subclasses merely bolt onto the chassis of their base class without directly interacting with their core features. Not so for the Bard, however, as a lot of their subclasses interact in important ways with their features, most notably the big one, Bardic Inspiration. Now, it just so happens that my group has decided to take a break from our current campaigns to run through Curse of Strahd revamped in celebration of the Halloween season. In this campaign, one of my players is playtesting the new One D&D Bard, and they're going to almost immediately hit level 3 after they escape the Death House in the upcoming session this weekend. When he selects his subclass, this player is going to have to consider that most of the options are no longer compatible with the new version of his class. And since this channel is mostly focused on homebrew and house rules, I've decided this would be a good opportunity to take a look at the new Bard and try to fix this issue. Namely, what changes would have to be made to the current edition Bard College options to make them compatible with the One D&D Bard. That is going to be the focus of this video. So what is the problem here? Why am I saying that the current edition's Bard colleges don't work with the One D&D Bard? Well, let's take a look. Right off the bat, let's look at Bardic Inspiration. In 5th edition, you use a bonus action to grant a Bardic Inspiration die to one creature other than yourself who can hear you and is within 60 feet of you. They can keep the die for 10 minutes, and at any point during that period, they can expend the die to add a d6 to the result of one attack roll, ability check, or saving throw of their choice. As you gain levels in the Bard class, the die increases in size, to eventually getting up to a d12. The new version of this feature instead is a reaction, which you take when a creature within 60 feet of you that you can see or hear fails an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. You can also expend a die to heal an ally as a reaction to them taking damage, but this is a wholly new addition to Bardic Inspiration and doesn't have as much of an impact on the subclasses that have been published thus far. What we're really focused on is the first bit. Now, ignoring the College of Lore, which was updated along with the new Bard, there are 7 official Bard colleges for 5th edition D&D, and all of them interact with the Bardic Inspiration feature in some way. For most of them, the new rules changes aren't that huge of an issue, as most of the 7 give you new features that you can use by expending uses of Bardic Inspiration, rather than augmenting it directly. For most of these, a few changes in wording would be enough to bring them into line. Now, another major change, and one that actually inspired the creation of this video, is that Bards in 1D&D now get a subclass feature at 10th level. In 5th edition, the Bard was unique in that it only got features at 3rd, 6th, and 14th level. Ergo, literally all of the published subclasses for 5th edition Bards are now missing a 10th level subclass feature. So, unless my Bard player chose the updated College Lore, which he's not, he would get nothing upon reaching 10th level in his class. Another change of note is the way bards cast spells in 1D&D. As everyone should be aware of by now, the class-based spell lists of previous editions have been collapsed into 3 unified spell lists, Arcane, Divine, and Primal. Bards, as arcane casters, can no longer cast a variety of very important and iconic spells until they reach 11th level and pick up their new and improved Magical Secrets feature. They are now also prepared casters, which overall is a positive change in my opinion, as Vancian casting has been dead since 3.5, and without that, there's not really any benefit to spontaneous casters compared to the versatility offered by preparing spells. Anyway, with all this in mind, how would I go about fixing this issue with judicious use of homebrews and house rules? Well, first of all, I'll say that overall I think the changes made to the Bard are positive. Though some ideas like changing Thunderwave and Shatter to transmutation spells are a bit weird, I can see the logic behind it, and there probably isn't a more elegant way to do this without introducing more issues. Personally, the only change I would make is finding some way of squeezing Fairy Fire into their spell list, as it's one of my favorite Bard spells. Maybe just go ahead and add it to the arcane list, or update the Glitter Dust spell from previous editions and stick it in there as a replacement. It has most of the same effects as Fairy Fire, except that it blinds its targets instead of making them glow. Just make it a transmutation spell so bards can grab it, and there you go. Makes as much sense as Thunderwave being transmutation. Anyway, as for the meat of this video, I'm going to run down the Bard colleges in 5th edition and briefly talk about how I would update them to work with the new Bard. For each one, I will also suggest a 10th level feature that fits into the overall theme of the subclass, and explain my reasoning for including it. If you don't like the specific examples I give, feel free to substitute your own ideas. If you'd like, share those ideas in the comments. If I get enough responses, I might make another video where I compile the best ones into a list, or something of that nature. Okay, so here we go. Ironically enough, our first subclass is actually the one my Bard player was looking to go into. The first feature of the College of Creation is Mote of Potential, and it's going to be our first focal point in this homebrew challenge. The main issue here is the wording of the feature, as by raw, it's no longer the creature that's using the die, it's you. So to fix this, we pretty much just have to go through this feature line by line and change every instance of when the creature to when you. Also a minor change, but in the animating performance feature, we can just remove the line about commanding it for free when you use Bardic Inspiration, since it no longer costs you a bonus action to use. Ergo, it's no hit to your action economy having to command your animated item as a bonus action. Finally, for our 10th level feature, let's give the Bard a feature that improves each of the uses of Notes of Potential. The ability check option can't really get much better without becoming broken, so instead let's augment our new use of Bardic Inspiration, Healing. When the Bard uses their inspiration die to heal, he or she can roll for the healing twice and use whichever result is higher, as well as adding their charisma modifier to the total. We can go the same route for aiding an attack roll or a saving throw. When the Bard rolls their inspiration dice, they can roll twice and use whichever result is higher. It's a simple upgrade that isn't too powerful, but would come in clutch in certain circumstances. We can also add the Bard's charisma modifier onto the damage of the attack roll option, though I would have to playtest this a bit to see whether or not this is too much of a buff. Also, while we're here, let's add the stipulation that when aiding an attack roll, creatures that succeed on the saving throw still take half as much thunder damage. This subclass is a bit more of a challenge because nearly all of its features revolve around Bardic Inspiration, and thus are going to need a few tweaks. The first feature, Unsettling Words, is actually perfectly fine. It's not impacted by the change at all, really. Unfailing Inspiration, however, is. Specifically, Bardic Inspiration is now instantaneous, so a creature can't keep your inspiration die. The simplest fix here is to simply change the feature so that when you roll your Bardic Inspiration die and the roll still fails, you immediately regain the use of Bardic Inspiration that you just used. This effectively does the same thing as the original feature, just with different wording. Now, for the 10th level feature, one option is to simply move Universal Speech up to 10th level, since this is the only Bardic College that doubles up on 6th level features. This could be a bit disappointing for some players, though, since both features on their own are sort of meh. So spacing them out by 4 levels makes them seem even more lackluster. Another possibility is provided by the One D&D Playtest in the form of the Influence action. Essentially, the new rules have chosen to codify diplomacy into an actual action that a character can take, so perhaps we give our Eloquence Bard the ability to take the Influence action as a bonus action. This is pretty simple and potentially powerful, as in the event that negotiations break down, you've still got your full action to drop a hypnotic pattern or hold monster on the target before combat begins. At 14th level, the Eloquence Bard gets Infectious Inspiration, which definitely needs a bit of work. First of all, there's a minor change in wording we'd have to make, since technically the creature you're inspiring isn't the one using your inspiration dice, but that's semantics. The real issue is the activation clause of this ability and how it interacts with the fact that Bardic Inspiration is now a reaction you would presumably take on another creature's turn. Obviously, if you're using a reaction to inspire your ally, you can't then use another reaction to grant that bonus to someone else, and even if you could, this would only be useful in situations where multiple characters were making a check simultaneously. I think the most elegant solution here would be to change this to, when you use your Bardic Inspiration to turn a failed D20 test into a success, choose another creature you can see within 60 feet of you. Once within the next 10 minutes, that creature can choose to roll one of your Bardic Inspiration dice when it fails a D20 test, and add the result to the total, potentially turning the failure into a success. This doesn't expend a use of your Bardic Inspiration. You can use this proficiency bonus times per long rest. College of Glamour is very easy, as none of the features directly interface with the new Bardic Inspiration rules. The only update that is arguably needed is replacing instances of Charisma modifier with Proficiency bonus. This isn't necessary, of course, but it would bring it more in line with where the current design paradigm seems to be headed. Likewise, the two abilities this subclass gives at recharge on a short rest can also be modified to be usable Proficiency bonus times per day instead. For the level 10 ability, this also isn't too hard to come up with. The whole class is about charming others, so it makes sense to me that you would be more difficult to charm yourself. So I would give the bard a straight-up immunity to being charmed by spells. Alternatively, you could allow the bard to automatically sense whenever a creature they see is disguised or transformed by magic, such as a hag using change shape, or a druid wild-shaped into a beast. This is another easy one, as none of the features are really affected by the changes to Bardic Inspiration. The only thing that really needs to be updated is Spirit Sessions, since bards are prepared casters now. The language would have to be altered to say the chosen spell counts as prepared until you finish a long rest, and doesn't count against the limit of bard spells that you can prepare. Other than that, the features we have here are pretty solid. For the level 10 feature, I would double down on one of the third level features other than Tales from Beyond. As the guidance spell is now a reaction and limits each creature to one use of its benefit, one option is to improve it further. Maybe a creature can gain the benefit of the spell again after a shorter long rest, or perhaps the die they roll is increased to do a d6 instead of a d4. Alternatively, we can take the spiritual focus feature and increase the bonus damage or healing to equal the size of your Bardic Inspiration die. Another option, since this subclass deals so much with spirits and is obviously designed for a Ravenloft campaign, maybe give the bard resistance to necrotic damage or advantage on death saves, or both. This is another subclass where the changes to Bardic Inspiration don't really matter all that much, because you're just burning uses to do other things. This is actually one of my favorite subclasses, so one idea I had that would be cool is if the level 10 feature introduced more powerful Blade Flourish options beyond the initial 3. Perhaps you could burn uses of your inspiration to inflict status conditions on your enemies, like frightened, charmed, slowed, or blinded, weaving your swordplay with fey magic. A simpler alternative that requires less design work would be to allow the bard to roll their inspiration die twice and use whichever result they prefer when using Blade Flourish. The poor College of Valor. Like most players' handbook subclasses, it just has been completely overshadowed by options that came after, especially the aforementioned College of Swords. First of all, the obvious, combat inspiration would need to be reworked to give you more options on how to use your reaction to inspire your allies, as they no longer choose to use your inspiration die, you do. Other than that, the core of the feature is solid enough that no real changes need to be made. I would, however, add in another feature at 3rd level to bring this underpowered subclass more in line with what came after. For me, the obvious choice is to borrow an idea from the College of Swords and grant the College of Valor a fighting style feat for free, and also allow them to select fighting style feats later despite not being a warrior class. I would also upgrade their extra attack at level 6 to fall in line with the updated Blade Singer, allowing them to forego a weapon attack to cast a cantrip. For the level 10 feature, I would provide them with a bit of a defensive buff to go along with their Gishy roll. Perhaps every time they use their Bardic Inspiration, they also gain damage resistance for a turn, or gain temporary hit points equal to 4 plus their proficiency bonus. Alternatively, since bards are officially linked with rogues now, perhaps you could get away with giving them evasion at level 10. I would say Uncanny Dodge, but the reaction activation would interfere with the new Bardic Inspiration. Finally, Battle Magic is probably okay as it is. Now that the bonus action attack isn't competing with your Bardic Inspiration, it's a good enough benefit. However, if you wanted to give it a bit of an upgrade, perhaps you could change it to be more like a limited quicken spell, as in when you use the attack action, you could use this to cast a spell as a bonus action on the same turn, proficiency bonus times per long rest. The last subclass we'll touch on is the College of Whispers. Once again, this subclass merely burns your Bardic Inspiration to do other things, so the change to the rules don't really matter for our purposes. The only thing we really need to concern ourselves with here is the level 10 feature. There are a lot of possibilities, but one that would fit very well in the theme of this class is letting them cast Detect Thoughts for free. This not only increases the paranoia factor this class banks on, but also synergizes well with its level 14 feature, as now you can use Detect Thoughts to figure out the secret your target is afraid you'll reveal, It also helps with impersonation using the level 6 feature, as you could delve into the memories of the people you're talking to and pluck out details that would make your act more convincing. Obviously, this feature would also add the spell to your list of prepared spells, so you could pretty much always cast it on demand. If you don't like this idea, or if you think it would be too disruptive in your game, maybe instead give them a more generic stealth or espionage-related benefit. Perhaps the ability to turn invisible and totally silent for a minute, proficiency bonus times per day, or giving them a permanent non-detection effect, thereby making it easier to eavesdrop on privileged conversations and gather dirt on potential marks without being noticed. Well, that's it for this one. How would you adapt the subclasses in 5th edition to make them compatible with the One D&D playtest? Would you like me to take a look at the other classes that were updated for One D&D, like the Ranger, for instance? Don't hesitate to let me know what you think, and also don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want to see more videos like this. Until next time, I've been Chameleon X, reminding you to always throw a coin to your Witcher.